Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order tonight. This is the Canton City Council, and this is August 4th, 2016. And if you would, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Russ?
Dear Lord, thank you for the bounty of these United States. Thank you for the progressive state of Georgia. Thank you for the city of Canton, where we are trying to make the most of its natural beauty and assets. And thank you for all the city of Canton employees who work so tirelessly on the 2017 budget to make sure that residents are taxed the least to produce the most benefit. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Okay. We'd like to welcome our guests and visitors tonight, and we especially like to welcome the Canton Stingers, Dizzy Dean Baseball, and they have really made a tremendous accomplishment for which we should all be very, very proud, and we're really proud to have their name Canton with them. You know, I mean, that's really important, and it makes all of us and all the residents of Canton be very, very proud of the accomplishments that you guys have done this year. So we're so proud of you. I want you to know. I have a proclamation here that I would like to read and present to them, along with a small key to the city that they can have, and they could probably put it on another baseball cap, maybe not their uniform, but they could put it on another one or a shirt or something. But it's just a small key to the city, and it's just in recognition of the accomplishments that you've made this year. I will read the resolution now. It says, whereas the City of Canton Mayor and Council wish to congratulate the 2016 Canton Stingers 9 and under Canton baseball team for their accomplishments as the 2016 District 3 champions, the 2016 Georgia State champions, and the 2016 World Series champions. Amazing, amazing. Whereas the head coach of the 2016 Stingers 9 and under Canton baseball team is J.J. Cantrell, and the assistant coaches are Toby Latimer, Wes Latimer, and Randy Shindemi. Did I pronounce that right? Okay, good. Whereas the team members of the 2016 Stingers 9 and under the Canton baseball team are Landon Graham, Tanner Savasier. I'm sorry if I mispronounce some of these. I probably will. Colin McGee, Max Davis, Luke Barber, Charlie Counts, Jonathan Tipton, Brant Arnold, Parker Shindemi, Tanner Latimer, Andrew Pierce, Nathan Kelly, and Griffin Latimer. Congratulations to all of you. Let me say that the Mayor and Council of the City of Canton are very proud of the 2016 Stingers baseball team and do hereby congratulate the Canton Stingers and encourage all citizens of Canton to applaud these young men for their refusal to concede defeat on their way to an outstanding victory. We understand you were actually behind in the last game, 5-2, and came from behind and actually won the game. That tells us you never quit, you never give up. So let me bring these down. have to share with you, too, I was just given a Canton Stingers pin myself, so I will definitely wear that. Okay. You have your agenda package. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda or amend it if need be.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. All right. You have, as part of your agenda package, the minutes from the July 13th special call meeting, as well as the July 21st council meeting. Are there any corrections or changes to be made to those?
I will not be voting because I wasn't there.
Okay. Any changes? If not, I entertain a motion to approve those minutes as presented.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Young, seconded by Mr. Grant. Any other discussion? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion with the exception of Mr. Rust, who abstained since he was not here. For your informational purposes only, there you have the financials for June 2016. Are there any questions or comments regarding those? Anybody have any questions? We have our CFOs here that will answer those. Okay. Public announcements. Anyone have any public announcements? Ms. McGrew.
I do, thank you. It's going to be a busy weekend in Canton. Friday is First Friday. The entertainment is Thomas Fountain, and he's quite good, a local man who sings country light, kind of crossover country. And that's from 6 to 9. That's always a popular event. At the Arts Center tomorrow night, there's a reception from 6 to 8 for an opening exhibit. And this is going to be a unique experience for everyone in that the artist, Christina Havens, will be doing a portrait of a live model at that time. I'd like to introduce our model, Mayor Hobgood.
She will have to take a lot of artistic license with that, I assure you.
Mayor Hobgood is going to be our live model tomorrow night, and this artist is extremely talented. I'm sure that she will make him look 20 years younger and 40 pounds thinner.
I'm counting on it. I'm counting on it.
So y'all come see the mayor get painted tomorrow, 6 to 8 at the Arts Center. Truly, the artist is quite talented. And Farmers Market Saturday morning, 9 o'clock. Extremely well attended lately, lots of good food and produce and some very fine quality crafts. And this farmer's market goes from 9 to 1. Saturday, August 6th is dumpster day. You can take items that are not picked up usually that you're trying to clean out your basement to Juniper Street next to the dog park. There'll be several dumpster Saturdays throughout the rest of the summer. If I could be so bold to ask you to check around your property for things that might have standing water in them, such as a saucer under a potted plant, a child's bucket, stacked up tires, might have left your dog bowl out collecting water. There's a mosquito problem that we're all very familiar with, carrying a dangerous virus called Zika virus. And it's not here in Cherokee County yet, but let's not wait to do something about it. Let's be proactive. Notice our property and your neighbor's property. Look for items that might contain standing water and tip it over. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have any announcements? Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. McGrew. 10-minute public input. We did not have anyone sign up for that this evening. Under old business, discussion and possible action on the adoption of the Cherokee High School Safety Zone. Thomas, do you want to comment again on that? Or okay. Sure.
Council. I'm Thomas Weaver. I reside at 131 Old Marietta Road. And for those of us who may not have been here long for the rest of Council, the purpose of me bringing this resolution before Council as an item for tentative review and possible assent to favorable consideration is this iron's been in the fire for 2 years now. Back in November of 2014, when all of these maps were originally drafted by the school district and adopted, I had brought to Council's attention some issues pertaining to this particular map that I wanted to iron out, but through talks with the city manager and others over the course of the past 6 months, I've just decided that since our children and grandchildren have returned to school, it would be best just to leave it as it is and just adopt it, and it would enhance public safety protocols, and it would advance public safety in our community, specifically for the enforcement of 1611-127.1 and subpart 4 of 1613-32 in regards to dangerous controlled substances. If this council were to deem it appropriate to grant favorable consideration and assent to ratification by the mayor to the office of the city manager for his review to forward it to his public safety personnel, I would be very much grateful. And with that, I ask for your favorable consideration of this resolution. I don't know what I did to it. I apologize.
Oops. Is that me or what? What is that? Okay. Thank you, Thomas. All right. Item D, update on cemetery ground penetrating radar results. We don't have a slideshow on this, do we? I hope.
No, I just wanted to update you since you did fund the GPR. I have the final report back and I'm working with that. We ended up with 55 unmarked graves in Southview Cemetery and 82 unmarked graves in Sunnyside Cemetery. Now, Sunnyside is the pauper cemetery, so there's more likely to be unmarked graves there. I've already purchased the 25 markers that you funded last year, so those are ready to go into the ground. And over time, I have the GPS coordinates, so over time, I'll keep working on making sure all of those unmarked graves are marked. I have no way of knowing who's in there, of course,
Right.
but they will be marked at least. Now that I have the GPR, I can file a petition with Superior Court to ask the court to give the city back up to 135 individual lots. I have to be able to show the court that the family lots, which are 20 by 20, and that's usually how they were sold. I have to be able to show the court that there hasn't been a burial in that family lot for 75 years. So if I have a 20 by 20 lot that has one unknown grave in it, I have no idea when that grave occurred, so I can't prove to the court that that is more than 75 years since the last interment. So there are a lot that I can't do something with, but I will be able to ask for at least 135 individual cemetery lots. And also, since we have the GPR, there are some lots that weren't unsold, but I was always afraid to sell one because I didn't know that it was empty. Now that I know that they're empty, I can safely and confidently start selling lots again. Even after Superior Court, should the court grant the city the 135 lots, it's a year before we can start using them again. But I've been working on that petition, and that's almost ready to send to Bobby for approval. And we'll be in the cemetery lot selling business again. Thank
Okay.
you all for funding
Thank you.
all these efforts.
Mr. Rust?
Susan, I just have one question. If you get a 20 by 20 family lot with one unmarked lot, and the Superior Court says you can't resell it until you can prove that it's been, that person wasn't buried less than 75 years ago, how far back do we as a city have records of when something was a body was put in there?
I was lucky some clerk along the way made a list of the names of the lots were sold to, what lot and how much. I have no record of who was buried in those lots. I did that by going headstone to headstone and making the list. I also started with a list from findagrave.com as well as Shirley Morris. Shirley Morris worked in the probate court, and she has written a book on cemeteries in Cherokee County. So I started with her list, the Find a Grave list, and then I went out and made my own list, kind of compared them. It's been a very long process, but I have a list now. But I also have a list of people who are supposedly buried in the cemetery, but I cannot find a headstone for. Some of those people might be buried in the unmarked graves, but I can't prove that.
It seems like some point, we have a record when a burial takes place. Start counting 75 years and you're good. And doesn't the city keep some sort of record? Yeah,
You
I know
would
they
think.
didn't mark it, but yet you'd think.
You would
right.
think.
But
I
at some
found this
point
list, and I was very happy I found the list of
I
who
mean,
the
if you
lots were
started
sold
counting
to.
today, 75 years from now, you could go back to the Superior Court, pretty old, but you'd go
Yeah.
back there
Well,
and say, hey, there's nothing been done here. I mean, at some point, we have a starting point.
I had to start with lots. There was no burial after 1940 because that's 75 years. So as the years, in another 10 years, if somebody cares to do this, they can go back tonight to any burials between 1940 and 1950. If that was the latest burial, then a petition can be filed again. It can be an ongoing process, but once we have 135, I don't know that we'll need any more for a while.
Except
But-
the 20 by 20 is pretty big a lot.
20 by 20 is burial surface for 8 people. I'm sorry, 8 people.
Right, right. As long as you're starting to keep good records, it will certainly help anybody in the future to try to figure this one out.
Yes, we'll be good now.
Yeah, okay.
But I'm reconstructing what's happened in the
Yeah.
past.
Thank you, Susan.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Under new business, discussion of the RFP for our insurance broker. Ms. Waters?
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Hey.
This is something that we tend to do every 3 to 5 years just to keep from being complacent, both ourselves and the broker. So this is something I'd like to send out with your approval.
Pull that up closer. We seem to be having.
Sorry. We'd like to send this out possibly with your approval, release date of August 22nd. We can send that, we'll post it on our city's website as well as GMA's website and see what kind of responses we can get. We're looking more, not necessarily for proposals unless you want to say proposals for services. We want to see what the brokers can offer to try to get the best benefit for the best price.
Very good. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions or anything about that? It's just going to
I
be going
just had-
soliciting proposals.
Lori, how many people or companies usually respond back?
We have in the past had anywhere from 6 to 12.
Oh,
It can get very lengthy. Last time we had 9. We got a committee together. I believe they were council that sat on it as well as staff members. Nathan, Melissa, of course, finance is a very key part in that. And went through and cut down to 3 before we brought it back to council.
I mean, the dollar quote is easy. The services rendered, you don't know until you once start doing business with them. So it's pretty tough to weed out the
Yes,
ones
sir.
that won't do what they say they're going to do.
Yes, sir. It is very difficult. They can make promises,
Right.
but showing and proof, sometimes that's the reason doing it a little bit more often, every 3 years, helps bring those services to the forefront if you have any difficulties.
So it's possible you might pick less than the lowest bid just because the services will not be sufficient.
Yes, sir. The money won't be involved into our plan year. This is more of a proposal for services as opposed to cost,
Right.
because until our plan year renews and we get those back, we cannot actually get a price.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much. Item B, discussion of local emergency operations plan. Chief Floyd?
Good evening. The local emergency operation plan is a document that we adopt every 4 years. This is a federally mandated document that has gone through GEMA, through the local EMA director to the city of Canton. The biggest change that is in this document over the one last year is it better defines the roles and responsibilities of the city of Canton. So that is the major change that is in there. Such as firefighting, it specifically announces the city of Canton. Search and rescue, it identifies Canton Police Department. Hazardous material, Canton, the city of Canton Fire Department. That is the biggest change in this document from 4 years ago.
Any questions? Very good. Thanks, Chief. Appreciate it. Okay, discussion of the outdoor burn ordinance. You're up again, I guess. Or
We'll do it jointly. We're getting towards the time of the year where we traditionally have our outdoor burn permitting, and what we have done is we've provided two options to you. One is an outdoor burn ordinance that allows people to get a permit to burn their yard waste, and the other one allows them to have a bonfire but not do their yard waste. That's a pretty good summary of it. Part of the reason why we looked at that is traditionally we will have people come in and get a permit to do burning of their own yard waste. And as part of that permit process, we let them know that if we get complaints from neighboring property owners, we'll contact them and tell them that they have to put out the burn. Smoke's moving over property lines and things like that. From my perspective, the city already offers leaf and brush services to residents, so there may not really be a reason for people to be burning on their properties if we're picking up that debris from them. So we wanted to kind of give you the option to either allow for yard burning or not allow for yard burning.
Any comments? Jack?
If you have acreage that has a lot of oak trees, what would you choose on that?
Well, one of the things that Chief Floyd and I talked about was that if it was your goal that, perhaps we don't want a lot of people getting permits to burn in their yard, what we could do is we could limit to acreage. We could say you're able to get a permit if you own 3 acres of property, because at that point you're probably not impacting the neighboring property owners as much as you would be if you're on a smaller piece of property. And then also in the city, most of our homeowners associations in our bigger neighborhoods don't allow burning anyways as part of their covenants. So this would be more protective of those smaller lots if you chose to put in an acreage limit.
Ms. Wilson?
If you get a permit, is it just for one burn?
Yes, it's for one day.
One day?
Do you have a...
Yeah, I do. When the city picks up yard waste, what happens with that?
We take the yard waste, well, it depends. It depends on what we're picking up, I should say. If we are picking up, sometimes if we're picking up brush and we chip it on site, occasionally we'll have residents that call and ask us if we have mulch available. If they're in the city, we'll deliver it to them from the chipper. We use the chipping sometimes for our own projects and things like that, and most of the time we're disposing of the debris. We're taking it up to ball ground to a mulch facility. So,
Thank you.
Mr. Grant?
I do like the idea of having an acreage limit on the outdoor burn ban. I think that makes a lot of sense. Are there times like during drought and all where there's no burning permitted at all?
Yes, sir. We follow the Georgia forestry rules that say that if the fire hazard or fire danger is 3 or more, then there's no burning. The state does come in and say that there's no burning because of the drought. This also covers that if we have a tornado come through during the burn ban, that it allows to burn the debris. So if we have a disaster, we can still clean up and burn to get rid of it. Now that would have to come back before y'all, but y'all can make the decision to allow it.
Okay. In your opinion, is 3 acres a good
Yes, sir.
threshold for
If you look at the rules that we spelled out, when you start looking at property setbacks, building setbacks, and all of the specifics as outlined through the state legislation, the houses, and we picked several houses on Main Street, either one of the ordinances, they're not going to be able to burn following state rules. And the idea behind this was to clean it up to understand, or to better understand it. So when we talk 3 or 4 acres, it depends on how the property's laid out. It's got setbacks from roads, setback from buildings, setbacks from almost everything. So it would, more than likely with the 3 acres, you should be able to burn with no issues.
Right. I would like to see the 3 acres added in there, but it's just me.
And then just for the public standpoint as well, you don't have to have a permit to have a fire pit in your yard. If you've got one of those that you purchased at the store, we still allow that kind of deal. You can roast your marshmallows in your yard. That has nothing to do with the permitting process. But how many permits did we have last year?
We issued somewhere over 50.
about 50 permits last year.
Ms. Wilson?
And I think I saw somewhere in here who we get the permit from. Do we make an appointment to see you, Chief, or do we come to City Hall?
The permits through the fire department.
So they come to the fire department?
Yes, and the chief was just mentioning last year, over the 50 permits that we issued, we ran 22 calls based on those permits. Because what happens is somebody sees the smoke, they call the fire department, we go out, and check just to make sure.
Okay. Ms. McGrew?
You mentioned bonfire. If someone wants to have a gathering at their home and have a sizable bonfire for entertainment, do they need a permit for that?
Yes, ma'am. There's very specific guidelines for bonfires as far as setbacks from property lines and combustible material structures. So they would get a permit for it. Now, there is no cost for the permits for us. We're just making sure that everything is meeting the requirements, but they would have to get one.
How far in advance do they need to call or come see you?
The day of. The more notice we have, that way they're not setting up the burn pile too close to something. So the more notice we have, the better it is for them. If they call us out, we can run out at any time.
Thank you.
And likewise, if they've asked for it with a wide notice, if we see changes as it relates to the Forestry Commission, we may have to go back out there and tell them they can't use it based on the conditions.
When they apply for a permit, do you go to the property and look at it?
Yes, ma'am. We visit every fire pit we do but visit.
Interesting. Thank you.
If you have what are these burn containers that people put on their deck or out in their yard stuff, is that a bonfire?
A bonfire is defined as a large pile, and I believe, if I remember correct, it is limited to 20 by 20. So when we're talking a bonfire, it is a very large pile.
Oh, wow.
The stuff what you're burning, even if you're digging a little hole and letting your kids, grandkids cook or have a fire in the backyard, that's not covered under this.
Oh, okay.
We're just looking at the larger burn piles that we're getting from cleaning up.
I think you're right. Mr. Young?
And what is the penalty if you start a fire without a permit?
We need to let's make it a goal before the next meeting to fix that thing. I mean, that needs to be fixed.
Right now, we would go out and ask them to put it out. If they don't want to put it out, we'll put it out.
But there's no monetary fine.
No, sir. We've not had a citation issued in a very long time for a illegal fire.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you. Discussion of the yard waste collection.
So we were just talking about the pickup of brush and leaves.
Yeah.
Before we get into that season this year where we're doing a lot of the brush and leaf pickup, we did want to kind of talk to you and maybe banner about some changes in rules as it relates to the program. A few years ago, the way the program operated, the city ran routes around the city, and so we would drive looking for brush piles. The problem with that is when you have a limited number of staff in public works, you've got people just driving around looking for something, and depending on who it is, they could be driving around and only perform one work order in a day based on seeing a pile. And so we were wasting fuel and wasting manpower by doing that. So we changed the way we operate a little bit by asking for people to call in and schedule the pickup. And then we would hand out work orders to a group based on the area that we were going to be in. But we would pick up on a routine basis, which has really helped out in public works. One of the problems that we have is that people take advantage of the program. For instance, we'll pick up a limb. I mean, the brush program was meant for a limb falls in your property and you bring it out, or if a tree falls on your property and you're personally cutting it up, we'll take it away. What happens in a lot of instances is you show up at the little old lady's house and she can hardly get down the driveway, and there's this huge tree that's been placed next to the curb, and we know that the little old lady didn't bring the tree to the curb. A contractor did it. Well, contractors are supposed to remove the debris when they do work, and and that's not happening. And in addition, when we get these big caliper diameter trees, it taxes our service as a community, and it taxes our chipper truck. It's not meant to do that type of work on a routine basis. Additionally, our leaf truck is aging, and so one of the things that we considered is how we handle that program. Right now, the leaf truck goes out, it's got a big vacuum on it, sucks up the leaves. We do have to call people occasionally because they don't get their leaves close enough to the edge of the right-of-way, and so it's hard for us to get that manpower, and we have to bring additional equipment to make it possible. One of the things that we considered was maybe we should purchase bags and ask property owners to bag their leaves. Then we don't have to have the pumper truck. It's $250,000 piece of equipment. We don't have to have that truck. We can do it with a dump truck. We can do it with any vehicle that we have in the public works fleet by just taking those bags. It's a little bit more work on the property owner side, but it also keeps leaves from blowing away once they brought them to the line and we're waiting to pick them up, say, the next day. So there's a little bit of a cleaner side of that. What we really want to do, though, is populate some rules and then work with our communications office to get these out before the season this year so that people know what the plan is with brush and leaf. Between February of this year and the end of July, we had run 380 work orders in the city to pick up brush or leaves. Of those, all but maybe 20 required at least 2 employees, and over a dozen required at least 4 employees to clean up that area. So it can be a very taxing program without good regulation on what we're offering.
Any question?
Scott can talk a little bit more about some of the issues that we face.
Mr. Rust?
Billy, giving away those paper bags, you know, Lowe's and Home Depot sell those things really cheap. I mean, it seems silly in a little bit because not all brush fits. You can't put a brush cutting in those very easily. It rips the bag apart. It's good for grass clippings and leaves, and that's about it. It seems like that might be a poor approach, but you can convince me otherwise to give those bags away.
That would be the focus of the bags, would just be leaves and yard clippings. It wouldn't be for limbs.
No, of course not.
Limbs would need to be of a certain size length. You know, what ends up happening is we get out to a site and there's a mound of somebody's trimmed their bushes and trees, and there's a mound taller than the vehicle and as big as the vehicle. It's not orderly placed, and when we're trying to run it, it takes a lot of manpower. If things get in there, if we're sucking up leaves, for instance, and somebody's not segregated the branches from the leaves, it stops up the truck. We have to stop the truck. We have to clean out the piping. We have to take it back to the shop, repair it, bring it back out. So having that segregation of limbs and leaves is good for us because it allows us to do more and do it more efficiently. And it's a free service. That's the thing. We want to be able to provide the service, but unfortunately what happens, there's 3, 4, 5 properties in the city that are keeping us from hitting the other properties because of the way they're taking advantage of the service.
It just seems like it would be hard to estimate how many bags you need. And if you're not paying for them, maybe you fill them less full than you would if you're paying for them, even if they're only $1.50 a piece or something, whatever. But I just think that's a part of the program that might be a little difficult.
Sure. Well, one of the things that we thought about too is if you've got a lot of debris in your yard, you've trimmed up all of your bushes and it's of a certain size, allowing you to freely transport them yourselves to our roll-off site, and we can chip them on that site. The problem that I see is if I would rather spend a little bit of money on bags than buy a $250,000 piece of equipment that's only being used a couple months out of the year. And in a good program, it shouldn't be used 12 months out of the year.
Yeah, the bad part is you're still going to need that truck even with the bags, I think. You're not going to say, are you going to tell people that they can only put them in the bags?
That would be the choice if we went to bags, yes.
What when you got brush, would you make them wrap it up or something, or put it in piles and tied it together? My waste management picks up mine, and I have to wrap it up and I've got a yard service that does that, but they don't do it all the way I want it. So something, you know, I have to wrap it up in something reasonable so one man can throw it in the truck without taking two people to do that, so you break it up.
And I think that's what we're trying to push, is the standard that Waste would have would be the standard that the city would have, so that it's either us picking it up or Waste picking it up as part of that process.
If they'll pick it up, why would we?
Yeah,
I
true.
mean, I wouldn't go to that expense.
You know, it could be based on when they're having the work done. I mean, if your garbage day's on Friday and you've done all of your yard work on Saturday or Sunday, it's sitting out on your curb for a week. And, you know, depending on how you've got it set up, your HOA may not appreciate that standpoint. That's where we can provide a service. But I think for us to have to go out and you've just raked every leaf in your yard to the edge of the curb and mounded them up, and they've blown all into the roads, they've blown into the storm system, you know, that's not providing a good service to you as the resident of the neighborhood, and it kind of puts us at a disadvantage, because now we've got to, you know, we don't know where we're going, we're just kind of riding around looking for it, and that's a little inefficient.
Okay. Anyone else have a question? Comment? Okay. Thank you.
Which way would you like to go? That's kind of what we want to know a little bit more, so we could set some rules before the next meeting.
Well, theoretically, you know, this is the first time we're really having this discussion. I don't know if anyone has reached a conclusion as to which way they want to go at this point. I hadn't actually. I mean, I don't know what's going to keep people from just blowing the leaves out in the street anyway.
Well,
what you going to do?
They do that, and the contractors do that as well, and that is an issue that we have. And so, as part of the education, it's also educating the homeowner as to what your contractor contractor can do and cannot do as part of the process. I think from our standpoint, though, our leaf truck's probably got another year on it, so we can either budget next year, the following year for $250,000 piece of equipment. We can look at something in between, like a trailer. Those are about $80,000 that have the same capabilities we could pull with a dump truck, or we can go to a bag system.
Mr. Goodman?
Yeah. I see where you're coming from on the expense part, but I think it's just part of what the city ought to be doing. People paying taxes, you know, all these years we've been raking our yards to the curb, have a leaf truck come up, suck them all up. You call them, they come usually within that day or 2 or 3 days. If they know where to come, they come. You know, they might be, everybody calls at one time and it takes 2 or 3 days. But I think that's a big part of it. The clippings, just like bushes, I mean, I've got hedges that grow a foot, and, you know, if it rains a lot, in a month. But on the other hand, if it's been like this summer, it hasn't grown very much. So, you know, you pile those up at the curb, and sometimes you're cutting this much, and sometimes you're cutting this much, and there's a lot of those, and you pile them up. And you call them, they come get it, they run them through the chipper, and it really doesn't seem to take very much time. I've never seen them get the machinery hung up or anything like that. I don't know. My feeling is that it's just a service that, just like having the garbage service out there on Ridge Road, it just helps the city stay clean and the yards look better.
Mr. Grant?
Yeah, I think it's something, I mean, given the fact that our leaf truck we have another year on it, I think it'd be unfortunate to just stop offering the service, but if it's a behavior change we want to encourage and we want people to move to the bag system, maybe it's something we start now and offer the choice of moving to the bag system, and maybe something we try to communicate over the next year. Hopefully our truck will last longer. It's not like we stop overnight and do it, but maybe it's something we evolve to over a year and through communication, outreach. Also, just going to make a comment to keep an eye on those little old men too, because they're sneaky as well. So.
Sure. Mr. Russ?
Billy, you asked us what we would want to do. I think I at least would like to know what you want to do. what you think is the best solution, and then we can vote on that. Because it seems like you're leaning away from buying another leaf truck, and the only real solution to that is to a bagging system, I think. And so you got a choice. We're either going to buy a new truck or repair this one for maybe a high expense, or go to a leaf program. So what do you want us to do?
We have a leaf truck, and it's working right now. I mean, we do have issues with it on the maintenance side. So that's problematic over the long run. I think part of it is we would like to say, okay, if we're going to utilize the leaf truck this fall, let's keep the mounds to a certain size. You know, part of the issue is you can tell the difference between what someone has done themselves and what a contractor has blown into a particular area and how they deal with it. And so, you know, that maybe we need to look at the size limits. Maybe we need to look at scheduling. You know, we had a conversation. You know, November is usually a peak time for the leaves falling, from our experience with the city. So maybe what we'll do is we'll say during this 2-week period, we're going to run routes during that period, and we'll pick up that way. Outside of that period, you need to schedule it with us. If you're going to have more than this size mound, please bring them to us. Or if you'd like to do it over a series of weeks or what have you, that might be another option. And then maybe we can roll out some bags this fall and see how that goes as well. And just kind of do a hybrid thing this fall.
I like Bill Grant's idea that maybe what we want to do is communicate to our community that we're considering changing our leaf truck program. And this year we're going to offer an alternate bags. And next year, maybe what we want to do is, if you had like a 2 or 3 week period, is there any way we could have a contractor come in and suck up the leaves during only that period? That's it. That would be a kind of a hybrid, but you know, we're still going to offer the leaf program. But if you got to have your leaves out October 1st to 21st, and that we got a contractor coming in, and that's it. Then our costs are fixed. We're trying to still eliminate the bag. If someone says, "Oh, the 22nd of October, I just finished," well, bring them bags, you know. But I think that might be a good way, and really try to avoid buying that truck, but yet still offer that kind of a service to the residents would be good.
We can look at a hybrid system.
$250,000 is a lot for a small service. It is a service, but it's, you only got, how many, 50 people that want this, or how many people want this?
That won't what?
That are using the leaf pickup program, using that truck.
Oh, more than that, much more than that.
Oh, okay.
Hundreds of
Well, I think the other thing you would want to do when you start getting into analyzing this, if there's somebody abusing it, at some point you're just going to mark them and say, we can't do this anymore for you. That's it. We're not in the business to let somebody abuse us. They're really abusing the other residents. We're paying for it. Thank you.
Ms. Wilson?
I was just going to suggest that instead of randomly driving around and looking for yard waste, you might want to just put the city on a grid, and certain weeks you do this part of the grid and others. So maybe that would help for a little while until we decide what we're going to do.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Young.
I was, if I understood correctly, y'all kind of have an idea of where your worst habitual offenders are. So I'm in favor also of putting, like you say, setting specifications for what can be picked up, and putting people on notice that abuse the system, maybe give them a limit of how many pickups you're allowed a month or whatever. But I also like the idea of having a chipper program at the roll-off site, so that if you have, particularly a tree falls down and you need to get rid of it, you have somewhere to take it, that you don't want to leave it in your yard for a week.
Well, and we had even talked about, you know, as it relates to trees, because we have trees that fall on the right-of-ways all the time. We cut them up, we take them back, having firewood available for free when it's there, mulch available for free when it's there, kind of deal for the residents as an additional service. You know, as you were speaking about habitual violators, we had at least one property this last year that we had to bring in the bobcat to move the leaves. There was so much. We had to bring in specialty equipment just to deal with it. And that to me is a clear violation of what the intent of the program was.
And also with the bags, might even do a first 10 bags free and you can buy more if you want, rather than giving them as many as they want.
Sure.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Discussion of the contract between the City of Canton and Playcore, doing business as Game Time, to be the contractor for the new playground equipment in Brown Park. Tom?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. You have the contract before you with Game Time for the new playground in Brown Park. And what we did is we sent out a request for proposal and heard back from 6 different companies. And per the request for proposal, we asked for 3 different design options. So we had 18 design options to choose from. This is not something I chose on my own. We had a committee that we put together here with City Hall staff, including Mr. Peppers and Mayor Hopgood, and that included about 7 people. And we made the decision for the option here with the Playcore, the Game Time equipment. And this is what is before you. I think you have the design of the playground as well in front of you. And so that's the contract and the design for the new playground in Brown Park.
Okay. Ms. Wilson?
I noticed that there will be in compliance with ADA. Will there be playground equipment that will be available for children with disability?
Yes, ma'am. It's on the lower section of the playset, but it is available for ADA usage.
That's great.
What I would mention about that is there are elements of this equipment that can be dealt with from the ground. So a child in a wheelchair, could pull up to a certain element. They would not be accessible on every element. Now, what we have done is we've got an application in with a private corporation right now for an accessibility playground, which is completely available to those with special needs. One of the things that we looked at in particular with that is that, that special needs playground equipment, if it's a swing for a wheelchair, for instance, how far it swings out makes it very dangerous for just being available for everybody to run around in a traditional playground. And so from our experience and our research, it's better off segregated on its own within a fence, to kind of keep those children who don't have special needs from destroying it because they're not playing with it the way it's supposed to be utilized, and also protects those that are on it from those around it. So we're looking at that as being available at Etowah River Park next to our other playgrounds, so that perhaps a mother or father could have children on both in a sight distance.
Ms. McGrew?
Thank you. I'm assuming that this playground equipment will replace what's already in Brown Park?
Will replace what's in Brown Park? Yes, ma'am. Our Public Works Department will take up the existing equipment out there. We're looking at after Labor Day to have that happen.
And how long will we be without a playground?
Once they start it, it'll be 3 to 6 weeks, depending upon weather. So we're going to wait to pull up a majority of the equipment until they get ready to give us a start date, and so then we'll know, so it's not sitting out there for like 4 to 6 weeks with no activity.
Okay, thank you. And this question is for Mr. Dyer. If we have playground equipment that is segregated from general use playground equipment, are we going to be found in discriminating of children with disabilities who are encouraged to stay off by themselves and not have their equipment with the other? I realize that it's safer. I've seen the wheelchair swing, and it is dangerous for other children to be running around. I just want to make sure that the city isn't going to be faced with any complaints about us segregating handicapped needs people who want to play in a playground.
I think as long as we have a reason for why we're doing it, would be fine. And the description Mr. Peppers gave about putting them adjoining or as close to that would, I think, suffice as well.
And per our representative with Game Time, Mr. Dennis Deal, we actually discussed that, and he was the one that suggested you put a fence around a special needs or all-inclusive playground.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Thank you. Discussion of the creation of a Parks and Rec Advisory Board. Mr. Peppers or Tom?
Yes, looking at the creation of an advisory board, you have the recommendations in front of you here. What we're looking to is putting a group of residents together that would advise on different Parks and Rec activities, programs, the future of the Parks and Recreation Department, and then submit those recommendations to you. It would be an advisory board, not a commission. They would not have any authority at all. So anything that they would bring before you would just be on a recommendation basis. So what we're looking at is starting out with a chairman and a secretary, and the secretary would also serve as vice chairman. So if the chairman was out of town and couldn't make the meeting, the secretary would take over the chair for the meeting. Being 7 individuals on the board, the quorum would have to be 4. So if there's not 4 people in attendance, then meeting would not take place at that time if there's not a quorum. Looking at right now, just starting out, an advisory board, looking at quarterly meetings as opposed to monthly meetings, although I'm not opposed to monthly meetings if that's what you guys feel that we need to go in that direction.
I would think quarterly meetings are okay as long as you would state in there the meeting shall convene quarterly or more frequently as needed. You know, maybe, I mean, you know, it might be there's issues come up in between that you need to do that anyway. I also would suggest that regarding the terms, I would suggest that the terms be concurrent or consistent with that of the appointing official, and that the appointments be at the pleasure of the appointing official. Just a thought.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else have any comments or anything on that? I think it pretty much says what that I had at least perceived that their duties would be, and that is to give a lot of recommendations and advice and lend support to the recreational activities here. They can really have a lot of input into what goes on. That's what we want the community to have, more and more input in this particular area. I think it's very, very important. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, next item, discussion of the GFA letter to extend the loan draw date for the wastewater treatment plant construction. Mr. Peppers?
At the last meeting, we gave you an update on the wastewater plant, which is basically that, you know, construction's going to complete likely going into the first quarter of next calendar year. And so our loan agreement basically says that construction's going to be completed before the end of December. So what we're doing here in this letter is requesting an additional 12 months to complete the project, thinking we're going to complete it in much less than that. But GFA, when we called them and asked them about this December loan closing date versus when we think the project might be finished in, say, January or February, they suggested we go ahead and ask for another year, so we only have to come back one time to ask for an extension as opposed to coming back multiple times. And additionally, one of the reasons why we brought this before you is the GFA board only meets so many times a year, and so if there is a question, we wanted to be able to get this before their next meeting. In most cases, their executive director can sign these without board approval, but just in case something should come up, we wanted to go ahead and get it before you so that there's not an issue there.
Okay. Any comments? I don't think we got much choice in that situation. I think we need to do that, and so, okay. Anybody have any questions at all on that? If not, we'll move on. Discussion of the CGI Inc. Community Videos Showcase Services. Mr. Matthew.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Last month, our Community Development Director, Ken Patton, and myself were contacted by CGI, who does a lot of video production and media production work for cities. They do a lot of work in fellowship with the National League of Cities, as well as the U.S. Conference of Mayors. The outcome of that meeting was CGI proposed to us the invitation to create 5 videos highlighting the city of Canton for free. It is a completely free service to us. We will not see any invoice of any kind. In the document presented to you, those 5 videos would feature 5 separate subject matters, one being a welcome video, another being one on education, one on healthy living, an additional video of choice, as well as one highlighting community organizations around the city. The only thing they request really is a list of sponsors of potential businesses that may want their names placed around a framework that they put on every video, and each business that sponsors will have their name posted there as well as a sponsor. So it's good publicity for them as well as great publicity for the city at no cost.
Okay. Let's see. Mr. Grant, you have a question?
Yes, I was just wondering, I know a few months ago we talked about this Canton magazine. One of our concerns was that and I know the next item we're talking about the marketing and branding strategy. And I know there's been some discussion about one of the possible outcomes of that may be a new website, and saw that these may be placed on the Canton website. So I'm just wondering if something like this, if after that strategy is conducted, are those the subjects we want to be talking about, or if we would want videos on the website? I just wonder if this would be a better thing to undertake after that strategy, we have that report back.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering if it's, premature before that is done. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I just wonder if it's the messaging that we want to prioritize, before you undertake this service. Just a question I had. So going through there, but
there's a 30-day out in it. So the way I look at it is between now and the time that we would be changing websites or adding the brand, this is something that we could do to enhance our current site. And likewise, there's no reason why, at some point in the future, these videos couldn't be housed on a different site. In most cases, when they're done, they're not done with a lot of graphics and so forth in the actual video, and we get to help write the script. So, that's something that we can be considering as it's being done. Part of the reason why this is coming to light right now is that the company's currently working with Cherokee County and has worked with the city of Woodstock on theirs. And so as they're working to refresh those, they would prefer to do all the video services at the same time because it's a savings to them.
okay.
Okay. Mr. Goodwin.
Yes. Do you have any idea on the sponsorships, what they're looking for monetarily?
Yes, sir. Sponsorships vary from around $9.95 from the low end to the high end of about $5,000.
And do they give you a budget of how many what dollar value they're trying to reach there?
I'm sorry?
I didn't know if they gave you an amount they're trying to reach, or if they just get what they can get.
Yes, sir. So the one thing they request is if the city were to enter into a contract with CGI, they would request a list of prospective businesses, much like the magazine that came before previously, where the city was afforded an opportunity to advertise for free, and we would provide that list to them of potential businesses and entities that may consider advertising. If none of them choose to advertise, that's fine. There's no threshold from CGI's end. The videos would still be produced.
Do they have to take their advertisers from that list, or can they just advertise anything that they
Yes, sir.
choose?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir, they could. It's open. The list is really
so
just a conversation.
They could advertise anything.
Any business in the city, yes, sir. Now, the community organization video, that they will offer to civic and nonprofit organizations for free. But for businesses, business entities, they do charge.
Okay, but did you say it would be a business within the city that they're advertising
Within the city.
necessarily?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Within the
It couldn't
city.
be another city.
I'm sorry?
It could not be another city. In our
No, sir.
area.
No, sir. Has to be in the city of Canton.
That's what
Mr. Rust?
How often would they refresh and change it? I mean, if we have 5 videos created and they're kind of a time element involved in the creation of it in terms of what they're showing, and 3 years later something needs to be changed, would they change it, or what would they do with that?
Yes, sir. They have the capacity to alter those videos. And videos are only really consistent from somewhere between 60 to 90 seconds at the most. So it's a very brief video, but we do have the opportunity.
Where do they publish them? Or where does the video appear, on YouTube, or
The video would appear on the city's website.
That's the only place?
We would house it. We have the opportunity to share it across a number of social media platforms. Sharing is all, that's really at our discretion. For some of the videos, they also post them on their website to show other cities, hey, this is what we've done in other cities across the U.S. or neighboring cities, which is exactly what they've done with us.
Is the final product kind of subject to our approval before it goes
It
out?
is.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And
they will run through. I'm sorry.
Would our website, I don't know if we can, we're advertising sort of for somebody, if we put it on our website and we have sponsors, let's say there's 10 sponsors.
It's a link.
It's a
on
link.
our website. It's not on our website.
But
It's
I
a
mean,
link.
can we do that? Can we do that, Billy? I mean, not a problem. Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Wilson?
I think my question was just answered. The actual sponsorship would not show on the website, correct?
Not on the city's website,
Okay.
no, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Well, that relieves me, because I don't like these golfers that have all the advertising all over their hats and their shirts and everything, and I just don't want Canton to look tacky.
No, ma'am. It will not be. It will not be a tacky presentation. All of their videos are of outstanding quality. This is something that isn't done with a cheap camera or cheap operation. By no means. This is quality work that CGI does. Sponsors will not be flashed on the city website.
What would it say on the link? I mean, how would it direct people?
So the first thing they have is once the videos are near production, they'll have something, they'll advise us to say something to the effect of video coming soon or check back soon, as to really kind of gauge suspense in the public and really kind of build excitement. And then once those videos are posted, either we could share that link on the city website, or as a lot of cities have done, they will include, it's almost like a bracket with the link to all 5 of those community videos. So if someone wants to find out about education opportunities here in the city of Canton, maybe it's a new family and want to learn more about the education system here, they could click the link to that video and the video would pop up immediately.
Mr. Grant?
Same is true for all 5.
So the videos are hosted on their site, CGI's?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
And so when they go to our video, it takes them to their site?
Mm-hmm.
And it's branded their site?
So it actually comes out as a pop-up window, if you will.
Okay. And then you say the sponsors of the videos are not identified?
The sponsor video, so it's the video itself, and then there's a frame around each video. So if you can imagine, say you're on YouTube, for example, and you're viewing a video, if you would imagine there's a white frame that is around the video itself, and in that white frame will feature the logos of local businesses.
Okay, so the businesses, sponsors are identified?
Are in the what, I'm sorry?
Are identified. The sponsors of the videos are identified?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. And you say the videos are 50 to 90 seconds?
60 to 90.
60 to 90 seconds?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sounds a little more like an ad to me, but do you have a link of that you could send us of samples? Because I think that
Sure.
would help us visualize this
Yes, sir.
better. And I still think that it's something that if we're, I mean, looking at our messaging and our brand, that it's at least something, if we do hire consultants, it's something that maybe they should look at it with us also. Just because I think even if we're not paying for it, but even if we have our businesses sponsoring it, the city still has some, credibility in there as well. So, I don't know, it's
Yes,
I
sir.
think it's something we should, sometimes when you get things for free, there's a cost
Not
associated with them.
Not free.
We know that the hard way, right?
Absolutely.
But maybe there's a link or other cities have done it, we could better understand it, I think.
We'll do.
Mr. Rust?
Can we pull the plug on this? Do we have a time frame? I mean, they're going to go to considerable expense. Let's say there's 10 advertisers, and somehow the city over a period of time just, maybe one of the advertisers turns out to be a bad guy or woman, whatever, or the business gets in trouble. And it really makes the city kind of look bad. How do we pull the plug on either one advertiser or on the whole video, that one video segment?
What we'll do, we'll send you a link so you can look at the videos and see what you think about them. I understand where Mr. Grant's coming from. I understand about the out that you're asking about. They approached us, so we wanted to put this before you. If it's something that you want to wait on, that's fine. I mean, you're not gonna hurt any feelings here. We just, since it came to us as a proposal, we wanted to bring it to you to at least look at. But I think we can easily go back to the company and say, look, we've just hired a communications director. We're just about to do our branding. It's just not the right time for us. That's fine.
It seems like it might be better time when these two things get in place, because we'd probably be able to direct kind of more what we really want, what message we're trying to get out.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
It's a good idea. I don't know what.
Sure.
Generally, if we have some safeguards, I'm not sure what we have to lose, but we kind of do have something to lose if somebody tarnishes our reputation, or it's inconsistent with what the branding finally came out, or with, or their message is poor. It's just not delivered right. So, I think waiting a little bit might be a good idea.
Ms. McGrew?
I definitely have reservations about the process, in that if it's housed on their server, would it be their property exclusively? I would want it to be our property, and if it's housed on their server and they have the ability to change it, would they be able to change it without our permission? So I have reservations about ownership of the property.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Thank you, Matthew.
Yes, sir.
Discussion of awarding a contract for the city branding and marketing strategy, professional services.
Yes, sir. Mayor and council, sitting before you is the agreement for marketing services with Marietta-based marketing firm ID8. The city decided to undergo a branding and marketing strategy that would really take a look at everything we just really previously discussed. Is our overall messaging, it's our brand, it's our logo, it's what message is Canton sending to future residents, our current residents, to prospective businesses, to prospective families, to tourists. Every now and then you just got to hit the reset button on those types of things, and the timing's great for us to do so. So the City Branding and Marketing Steering Committee, which also consisted of Mrs. Wilson and Mr. Grant, we accepted 10 proposals from branding and marketing firms. We narrowed those down to the top 3. We decided to interview each of those 3. And the one that stood out to us the most is the one whose contract is sitting before you now. It's ID8. I will add that in addition to the original proposal itself, we've also added photography services as well as Esri tapestry segmentation, which is an in-depth look at a lot of our local demographics to understand a lot of the preferences. It gets you data even down to the household level to help us understand the types of citizens that live here as well as the types of citizens that are moving here. It's really good when you start to gauge attitudes and opinions and where we want to go. And so, again, the contract is sitting before you for the approval of going into a branding and marketing strategy contract services with ID8, who's the firm we all ended up selecting.
Any comments? Questions? I guess my question, when I had to ask Billy before, I always heard that if you hire a contractor to paint your house, that if you had to give them money up front, it wasn't a good thing. And this, they're asking for 10% of that money up front. Just a comment, that's all. Anyone else? Mr. Grant.
Well, speaking from that industry, it is a common practice, and when you, because we're actually engaged them for a long-term project, and so that is a common practice, and I'd actually say the industry standards probably would be a little bit more higher than 10%. So there's nothing unusual about that. So of course we're retaining them over a period of time. So.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Russ?
Billy, you met with Bill Grant and the mayor with these, and you, Matthew, or who all was a part of the decision-making process to come up with? You were not involved. Okay.
We had Mr. Grant, Ms. Wilson reviewed. We had Mr. Patton, Mr. Thomas, and myself that met with we reviewed all of the applicants, all 10 application packets, ranked them, narrowed them down to our top 3, and then interviewed those top 3 here at City Hall.
And this is the one you think is the best for us and the best deal?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have a question, comment? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see, what's the new one? Discussion of the City of Canton ordinances, Article 3, 6, that's a whole bunch of numbers there, looks like. This has to do with House Bill 960, which establishes certain interest rates and penalties and so forth on delinquent tax bills or other things too, I guess. Mr. Ingram, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, House Bill 960 was passed and is effective July 1st of this year. It related to, among other things, administration and collection of revenue, provided for confidentiality of certain tax information shared between authorities, adjusted distributions of penalties between taxing authorities, for example, if the county collected the municipal taxes, which is not the case here, of course, and it provided a limit on interest rate charged on delinquent payments. The ordinance amendments that you have before you relate specifically to the interest rate limit that authorities can charge on those delinquent payments. House Bill 960 has set the limit to be 3% above the bank prime loan rate as provided by the Federal Reserve, published each January. Currently, this prime rate is 3.5%, resulting in a maximum interest rate that can be charged by governments as 6.5%. The city's current ordinances have language that conflicts with these rules. The amendments that you have in front of you change the wording within those ordinances to reflect this new law.
Okay. Sounds good to me. I don't know about the rest of it. Well, actually, one thing it does, it makes good sense. You know, prior to this, on a delinquent property tax bill, it was like 10% interest on an annual basis, and now, I mean, that at one time that might not have seemed so bad, because there needs to be an incentive for people to pay. In other words, the interest rate needs to be higher than what they can go to the bank and borrow it for. You know, so and now they've rolled that back to 5%. On, isn't that right? Something like that on a property tax.
6.5%.
6.5. I'm sorry, but anyway, it's not 10 anymore. So. I think it was a measure that needed to be corrected, and probably in the future years need to be corrected again.
I ask, boy, this is a bunch of stuff, and I didn't understand it all, but I wanted to make sure I know that you were talking a little bit about taxes collected on behalf of the municipality by the county. Is SPLOST affected at all in this?
SPLOST is affected, but not as it pertains to that.
Okay. So if the county didn't pay the cities quickly enough, then they could have an interest charged to them
I would
on
expect that
SPLOST.
it would pertain to that if that were the case, which I have not found to be the case historically.
It'd be a hard sale to get them to pay, I bet, wouldn't you? Probably. I don't know what that penalty would be if they didn't pay.
75%.
More interest? Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Okay, thank you. Okay, budget process for fiscal year 2017.
We will be having a public hearing on August the 18th for the public to comment on the budget for the upcoming fiscal year. As stated in the budget meeting that we had earlier this week, the budget is based off of a tax cut. We'll be rolling the millage rate back to 5.6 mils from 5.85 mils, which is above and beyond a revenue neutral rollbacks. We'll actually be cutting the taxes in the future year, and based on having that public meeting, that would be one reading. Then the mayor and council will have another reading and the vote on September the 1st on the budget. So that's our process.
Okay. Any comments? Okay. Thank you. Discussion and possible action on acknowledgement / paving of Woodland Road. Something we may need to take an action on there.
Woodland Road is a strange little street in the city that is defined as an alley in what we can find in property records, which are very old. Apparently, at some point, it has been paved. We don't necessarily have records as to who did that. And at some point, we installed water and sewer along the road in what we would consider to be our right-of-way. So what we're basically asking council to do tonight is to approve Woodland Road as a street. We just did a paving project on Shamley Lane, and we still have some paving left to do with Bartow Paving. And as part of that, we would make a change order with them to go ahead and pave that portion of Woodland Road so that it's completed as Shamley Lane is completed.
It's pretty clear to me that that street has been paved by the city, and the city has worked on that street many years ago. And once if it had not been a street that the city maintained at that time, once they put equipment on it, it became a city street, and it's shown on plats as a 16-foot alley there, which technically would be some right-of-way. Mr. Grant?
So it is shown on the plat as a city alley, not a private street.
It's shown on the plat as a right-of-way.
A right-of-way.
We
Okay.
couldn't find anywhere where the city had actually accepted the street. And then when we approved that street list last year with all the city streets, it wasn't on there.
Mhm.
And so, as it relates to paving projects, it was brought to our attention from a property owner, hey, when are you going to pave Woodland while you're down Shamley? And we went back and looked, and we can't find anywhere where the city actually accepted it. But nobody owns it. So technically, somebody in the public sector owns it, since nobody in the private sector owns it.
I mean, I do know it was paved by the city before, and it was, there was some, when the water and sewer, when sewer is put in, there was some destruction to the pavement, so it makes sense to me that we would pave it again, but
this would allow a formal action on it so that we can go ahead and get it done. And I would encourage you to do it tonight, where we can go ahead and arrange that with Bartow.
I have little doubt that it was a city that paved it originally.
I'd like to make a motion that we pave Woodland Lane, the right-of-way.
Have a motion, and Ms. Wilson seconded motion.
I have a discussion. Don't we need to also then formally accept it? I mean, if we really haven't, I would say we have two actions. One is to pave it, or one to accept it first and then to pave it. So it's a change of the motion a little bit, but it's the same thing.
And really what we would be accepting is that portion of the road that is
16
listed
feet
in
wide.
parcel as an alley.
Do we need to change Bill's motion then, or do we want to do that? Because we're not really still, again, formally accepting that street. We should.
Do we,
He could accept it as
do we have to
friendly
have the
amendment.
permission of the property owners to accept accept it if we're not sure?
It doesn't appear that the property line goes to the center of that.
Or just the right of way.
Yeah, the map already shows an alley there, but it doesn't show the ownership of that alley.
And you really can't accept it. Nobody's dedicating it to you. So you're really just acknowledging that it is a city street and approving further paving.
Okay.
Correct.
So we would just approve to pave the right of way?
Yeah, I
Does
think
that
you would
no,
just
no?
acknowledge that it's the city, motion to acknowledge that it's a city street and approve repaving.
Correct.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Anything, any other, you have a comment? Okay. Anyone? Okay. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All members voting for the motion. Thank you. Discussion and possible action on the budget amendment for the critical repair of the fire engine. Mr. Peppers, you want to talk about that? It's another one of those Louisiana purchases or whatever.
I'm going to pass this on to the fire chief.
Good evening. One of our engines, we're having front-end issues. It is a Timony front end that we cannot get parts for. We've had the truck looked at for the last 2 months, and they're unable to fix it, to the point to where when they raise the truck up, the wheels just start slamming back and forth when the truck's running. No idea how it's doing it, but it's doing it. So we're requesting to send it to Louisiana and do like we did the last truck, take that independent front suspension out and put a straight axle suspension under it. This should give us at least 5 more years of life out of that truck.
Okay. To what degree have you sought out those who may be able or not be able to fix it? Is the fact that the parts are only available through
Ireland.
Through that company?
Well, the parts are in Ireland. The closest company we have here is a company in Atlanta. They've seen and worked on the trucks a little bit. We've sent it to them. We've actually sent it to 3 different companies in Atlanta. The next closest company for us to send it to would be in Texas. So we've used all the local resources, and we've rebuilt the sectors, rebuilt all the pumps, and they truly just have no idea why this front end is giving us this trouble. We've got 3 engines with that front end still left on it, and this is the only one that's giving us this kind of trouble.
And that's the same make of truck that we had the front end problem the last time?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Rust?
You can't use this truck right now?
No, sir. Can't
How do
drive
you
it.
use it? Was one of the evidence of the problem the tires are wearing out too, or was it just not?
That front end, with the weight of the front end, is actually on coil springs, and it is tilting the truck out, and it's wearing the front. We're getting about 4,000 miles out of a set of front tires.
But right now you can't use it at all?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Grant?
What did you say the cost to repair it was?
It is approximately $26,000.
26,000.
Does that include shipping?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
Now, is the truck going to be shipped down there and shipped back,
Yes,
or is
sir.
somebody going to drive it back?
They'll actually ship it back. We looked at it's $3,000 round trip. For us to get somebody fly them down there, we feel that it's just cheaper to let them bring it back.
Okay. Any other comments? Do we have a motion to
So moved.
permit that? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Mr. Goodwin seconded the motion. Any other discussion or questions? If not, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
Thank you.
All members voting for the motion. Thank you. City Manager's report, update on Laurel Canyon Fire Station.
We had bid openings on July 15th, 2 p.m. here for the fire station at Laurel Canyon. I just wanted to give you a public update on this. We had five bids that came in. Those bids ranged from $2 million to $2.341 million. We are currently working with Wiley Wilson to evaluate those bids, look at the responsiveness of the bidders, and also to evaluate their references at this time. We have a 90-day period from the date of the opening of the bids to the approval of the contract, so we're just doing our due diligence at this time.
Okay. Any comments, questions? All right. Thank you.
I do have a couple of other items to bring you up to date on. One is on our paving schedule as it relates to our projects. We have been working this week to pave. We had paving completed. Hospital Road was completed this week. We've completed almost all of the projects. One of the ones that we have left goes Brown Street, which has some different paving techniques in it than we've seen in other places based on what we're doing with shoulders and things like that. That'll be coming up next week. Additionally, we have a request from our company out in River Green that's doing the striping that I wanted to bring before you. They feel like if they can stripe on Saturday and Sunday of this weekend, they can complete that project and be out of the neighborhood. If they can't stripe, then they'll come back next week. I would prefer if they could pave it, if they could stripe this weekend to do that, because that keeps them from conflicting with school buses and things like that since we're back in the school season. What we have asked them to do is if they are going to stripe during the weekend, from them not to mobilize any equipment before 9 a.m. And that way it's less of a hindrance to the neighborhood out there. But now that the buses are running, if we wait until the week, it may take an extra day or two to complete that project based on the start and stop time with the school buses.
Are you asking for approval for that to happen, or what?
You don't have to approve it, but I wanted to get some nods of the head to make sure it was okay with everybody.
Mr. Russ?
You want a motion?
No, we don't need that. I think it's just.
No,
unless anybody has
Billy,
heartburn with it.
isn't striping equipment pretty quiet? I mean, it doesn't make a lot of noise.
It's not as bad. We just want to make sure that if we're doing work on the weekend on a public project, that we let everybody know. We try to stick with our noise ordinance and things like that. But in this particular event, the commotion that it causes to do it during the work week and during the school bus week is worth doing it over the weekend. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. Additionally, under the charter, I'm required to give you a request for an acting city manager in case something should happen to me. And I sent you a memo earlier this week requesting that our CFO, Nathan Ingram, be listed as the official acting city manager. That does require council approval, so I would entertain that tonight.
I'll make a motion to approve that.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Okay.
And then the last item I have is relative to our project on the former Board of Education site, on the two buildings downtown. The developer on that site at a previous meeting had proposed a site plan, and I believe everyone got a chance to see it, that included a new construction project on the corner. That new construction project includes a drive-through on the back side of it. Currently, our permitted uses table in the Central Business District does not allow restaurants with drive-throughs. One of the things that the city can do is the council could entertain holding a public hearing at the September 1st council meeting, us advertising it, and you amending that permitted uses table so they can move forward with that particular project. But I wanted to get your blessings on that before we moved on that route.
Yeah, what I guess we do there would be able to hold the public hearing, and then we could, when would we be able to vote on it on the 15th or the?
You would have to waive the two reading requirement to be able to vote on it on the 15th, but you could.
But even if we had two readings, then we'd have to do one on the 1st at the public hearing?
You could do one on the public hearing is going to be on the 15th?
Public hearing would be on the 1st.
On the 1st of September. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I was thinking you were doing August 18th.
We could do a reading
September,
on the 1st.
you could vote on the 15th.
1st, 15th, and then
it would be approved on the 15th.
No, you could approve it on the 15th.
We could approve it on the 15th. Okay.
Right.
Well, what this would certainly help out with the Panera Bread deal, as you know, which is what we're talking about here, and if we could restrict this or limit this to the acreage size master planned area, then we probably wouldn't get into a situation that probably presented itself such that our ordinance did not permit drive-throughs downtown anyway at that time. So on a bigger planned master planned area, then I think, you could work it out so the traffic would go as it should be. So, Mr. Rust?
If we do not approve a drive-through, they're kind of no-go on that site anyway, wouldn't they be? I mean,
I think it would be a no-go on the Panera.
yeah, that's what I mean. Panera would just not be there. I hate to think that we got a gun to our head, but, it's kind of an easy thing to control. If we approve it for them, the likelihood of somebody else coming up because of the site requirement space is slim.
Yep.
So, how much risk? We'll deal with it if somebody else comes up with a request, but it doesn't seem like we're going to have to deal with this very frequently. So we'll just do what we have to do. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. You have anything?
That's all that I have.
All right. We do have an executive session to discuss possible litigation or litigation that has been ongoing and so forth. So I'll entertain them. You got some?
I do apologize. I do have one more thing. I did want to introduce Angela Thompson.
Sure.
Angela is our new Communications and Outreach Director for the city.
Welcome.
She started with us on August 1st, and I'm sure she'll take time over the next couple of weeks to reach out to each one of you, but I did want to take a moment and introduce her.
Glad you're on board. Thank you. All right, I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session. We will not be coming out to vote on any issues.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Grant made the motion. Jack made the second. I guess somebody did. Okay. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Okay.